So it's November 1st, 2019, and this is episode 2 of Film Cult Podcast. And as you could probably already tell, I've got a microphone. Thanks so much, Josh. My friend Josh gave me his microphone for recording. So hopefully that'll make things sound a little better. I'm working on figuring out Adobe Premiere a little bit more, so maybe the video will be a little better as far as showing the film titles I'm talking about, and along with their poster, hopefully kind of have some cool transition or something throughout each one. But that's in the editing stage. Obviously, right now I'm recording. So, yeah, it's November 1st. Yesterday was Halloween. So, I actually have a lineup of some pretty scary movies to talk about. And the first thing I'd like to address is and the tail end of my first episode. A lot went wrong. The quality including, but I was starting to talk about scary movies to tell in the dark. That's the title, correct? Scary stories to tell in the dark. Yes. Um, I went over the setting, went over a few characters, and then I just kind of trailed off and ended the podcast. So it wouldn't be fair to just talk about a movie and then not give a full review like I had promised. And what is the point of the whole video? So here I am. So we're gonna just jump back into that one. So as I was saying before, this is pretty. It was a pretty okay movie. As far as the plot goes, um, it was a little. It had one of those ambiguous endings where it was kind of like leading up for a sequel, but it did not deliver and such. And it was kind of like one of those things where it's like there could be another half hour of the film left, but oh no, we're just gonna end it off right here and hope that we have another movie in the future to go about, because this girl is looking for her friend, and her father was in the hospital, and like all this stuff happened, and it just kind of ends. And that was really, at least for me, is kind of an unsatisfying way to end any type of movie, whether it's horror genre or not. But as far as the monsters go in the movie, I know it's based off the pictures that were in this book, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, the original novel, which is like a series of vignettes of different like scary tales um, that they go into and kind of bring to life. They bring, like, I'd say 3 or 4 different stories. I know the Big Toe is one that is shown. The Red Spot is another one that they bring to the cinematic view with their plot, and they kind of make it their own story, as saying that more stories appear in the book based off their friends. Everyone who found the book is now a part of the story, and it is written blood as it's happening to this person. So they're trying to stop their friends from dying in these horrific ways. So okay, scary movie. I guess popcorn flick. It's enjoyable for that. Um, yeah, there's not really much to say. The creatures themselves obviously are based off those images that were in the book, which I kind of remember as being creepy, but kind of some of them are kind of silly looking, and it just kind of brought, especially that like fatter one that's like in the hallway. I'm not really sure the name of that one, but like I said, it was just kind of okay at best. So yeah, as I said, I was just kind of recapping from last review on that one. So that's Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I wouldn't, at the end of the day, wouldn't recommend seeing this movie. It's just okay. So, as I was discussing last week, uh, there was a movie coming out in theaters that I really wanted to see, and that was called The Lighthouse, which is a film by the director Robert Eggers, and he also directed the 2015 film The Witch. So I'm going to talk about both of those, The Witch coming first because that movie came out first, and The Lighthouse because According to some little research that I had done, they are companion pieces with one another, which was um, not something that I got after seeing The Lighthouse. After my view of that, I did not see those films as having any sort of parallel together, but as it was told to me, that is a companion piece to this film, The Witch in the Lighthouse. Sorry, this is like a mess already again, but here we go. We're powering through. So The Witch is a, a pretty cool horror movie, and it definitely takes a certain type of viewer to enjoy this movie, and that is very much said for The Lighthouse as well. Is that you need to be in a certain kind of open mind to watch these two movies. Definitely more so The Lighthouse, but like I said, I'm going to start with The Witch. So The Witch is, the full title is The Witch, A New England Folktale, or the original title, just shortened to The Witch. This movie follows a family in 1630, and these devout Christians are living after being exiled from their town, which is shown in the very beginning. Um, and their newborn son mysteriously disappears, and their crops begin to fail, and everything starts pointing towards witchcraft, obviously, as the title suggests. And there's just really, really good filmmaking in here. Really cool retelling of events. And it's one of those movies where definitely reading the trivia at the end of the movie or during the movie even is highly recommended by me, because it kind of gives you a little more of the story of where they are bringing this information from. And these are like actual retellings of written accounts of what happened during this time period, because this was 1630, which is like right before the Salem witch trials and all of this mass hysteria about witches and witchcraft. So to bring a movie like this, it's kind of like a prequel to all of that stuff that we've heard so much about, and it's a really cool movie. It was only shot in 25 days, and most of the film's dialogue and the story were, like I said, based on writings from the time. So it kind of gives you a historical fiction kind of amalgamation of all these different accounts. And I guess they sort of pick and chose what ones they wanted to talk about, or which ones they wanted to put into the movie and to happen to this family. But it's really cool idea. And yeah, the lore around this and this colonial New England town, and this family, after being like exiled from their town, are kind of living on their own, and all these horrible things start happening, and it's definitely a tension builder. And the characters are brilliantly acted by these actors and actresses. I don't know any of them by face per se, but everyone's really, really well done. This film was shot in a 1.66 by 1 aspect ratio. Another thing that parallels with The Lighthouse, which was also filmed in like a square aspect ratio. The cinematography is just beautiful in this movie. In both movies. I keep referencing The Lighthouse, but I'm gonna talk about that one after this. But definitely a great character film, a great just account of all this historical witchcraft and evil. Is basically what I have to say. I don't want to give anything away because I definitely recommend this movie. It's on Netflix right now at the current moment, so easily accessible. And if you come out of this film and you're like, wow, I really enjoyed that, I would like something of the same taste, The Lighthouse is definitely a step up. That was saying The Witch is more straightforward in its story, and in its characters, and the Lighthouse kind of takes a few more risks, I think. And so now I will transition into the Lighthouse, which is Robert Eggers as well, and it stars Robert Pattinson and William Dafoe as Wickies, lighthouse keepers in the year of 1890 or 1890s. And so they play two lighthouse keepers who are stationed at a lighthouse for 4 weeks. And they are taking care of the lighthouse and tending to all the chores that go into that. And we find out very early on that William Dafoe's character, Wake, I believe his name is, and Robert Pattinson is Winslow, Ephraim. These two characters do not get along at first, and Robert Pattinson is kind of standoffish. Well, William Dafoe as well is kind of standoffish, and their characters kind of conflict in that manner. And Robert Pattinson wants to do everything by the book, and William Dafoe is saying that he is the book. And so he kind of gets forced around. Robert Pattinson gets forced around as like a slave to do all the chores. And every night, Wake will just go up to the lighthouse and just tend to the light every single night. It's his duty and his duty only. And that's kind of the setup. And things, again, the tension just builds up, and they're going into this movie. There's just so much unsettling noise, and the visuals are just stunning. This whole movie's in black and white. That square aspect ratio, as I mentioned, and it's just a very slow building up at first. You're just getting this atmosphere, and it's just brilliant. There's this establishing shot in the beginning of Pattinson and Dafoe are just walking towards the lighthouse, and they just stand and look into the camera. Not that the camera's actually there in their sense, but it's just like kind of like I said, an establishing shot of just, and it's just, you're sold from that moment of them as being two lighthouse keepers in the 1890s. Like everything, it just feels so real and so visceral. And I believe they shot a lot of the movie with the actual weather, and there's just such harsh like rain and wind, and there's parts where just rain is just flying in Pattinson's face, and just his acting is phenomenal in this movie. I know William Dafoe is a great character actor, and he's been in many a role that's just shown his acting, but I've never seen Robert Pattinson in a type of performance as this, and I'm pleasantly surprised, because he just gives the acting performance of maybe his career so far, definitely from what I've seen. You know him from Twilight fame and a few other projects, but I've never seen him in something like this. His accent, his demeanor, everything is just selling you to this point that both of these characters go mad. And the plot is very hard to follow. I feel like even the most experienced like screenwriter or anybody who thinks they know a lot about movies and stuff, it's hard to figure out what's coming next. And I believe that's definitely intentional. It's there's a lot of things that just happen that are just really jarring, and I think it's just meant to keep you on edge. And these weird plot points and stuff, everything just keeps building up and up and up, and unsettling is just the word for this whole entire film. The whole thing is just unsettling, and the sounds of the sirens of the lighthouse and everything, and the wind and the ocean, it just all builds up to make you freaked out, and it does an amazing job at that. And with that said, though, this movie is not for everyone. My girlfriend and I actually spoke to this woman right after seeing it. She was sitting a few rows ahead of us, and she was an older woman. She was not happy with this movie. She said, the normal, that's 2 hours of my life I'll never get back, and what was the point of that, and like all this stuff. And it was clear that she did not enjoy it. And yeah, I think to the average person just going to see a movie, um, and the trailers do not give anything away, which is brilliantly done. I saw this trailer for this movie definitely back in like July or August, and I was just completely like entranced. I was like, oh, I have to see that when it comes out. And so to finally see it this week was really good, because I was just waiting for it, and I rewatched The Witch again, and was still set on that being like one of the best horror movies of the year. Back when I saw it originally, so to see it again, to affirm my beliefs in that film was definitely nice. It was good. It was a good experience to see that, and then to see this. But The Witch, a little more straightforward, um, a little more easy to follow. This one is definitely more about the characters and about their fall into madness. Both of these characters are going crazy, and you can witness this. And they're the only two characters in the movie. Technically, there are two others that we see, but they're more or less just there for um, hallucinogenic purposes, I guess I would say. But I think if you see The Witch and you like it for the story and for the characters, and you're interested in seeing something more like that, I think you would enjoy The Lighthouse as well. And so in that, I recommend it as a full movie-going experience, because there's just some disturbing parts and some wicked imagery, and it's really interesting to see. And it definitely lived up to what I was not what I was expecting, but it lived up to expectations. If that makes any sense at all, definitely doesn't. But so that's The Lighthouse. And again, another film to go into like completely blind. You can watch the trailer. It definitely sets the tone of what you're going to see, but otherwise do not look anything up. But after, it definitely gives you a little more clarity as to what Robert Eggers was going for. If you read some interviews that he had post release, and the trivia page in IMDb is always something that I recommend, because there's really interesting tidbits and kind of information about the process of filming it, and the things that Dafoe and Pattinson went through to kind of get into character, and all those things are incredibly interesting, at least to me. And to I'll just read a few of them, because some of these stick out to me as being really cool. Like I said, this film is set in 1890 and is shot on 35mm black and white. And they use a Panavision Millennium XL2 camera and a vintage Bolter lens from the early 1918. So they're really trying to get this vintage early photography look. And there's even a custom cyan filter that was put on the lens to emulate the look and feel of orthochromatic film of the late 19th century. So definitely a dedication to the setting and the atmosphere that they're going to, and that's really cool that they can do that. And as far as Pattinson's accent was based off an area of Maine, a farming dialect, because he's originally a timberman, as he says in the film. And Defoe's is more of that Atlantic fisherman, sailor jargon, as this tidbit says. But they are fully immersed in these characters, so much that I read that Robert Pattinson would make himself gag and throw up before filming scenes, just to get into that emotional extreme, to kind of like psych himself up. And he would beat himself, and he would just put himself through very physical turmoil to get into character. And it's definitely shows. These scenes are absolutely wild. And yeah, the audio is mixed also mono, and that makes a difference, honestly, because there's just some noises that are just like almost ear piercing and just like horrible. Like you just kind of almost want to. There are scenes where you want to look away, and there's definitely some noises that you wish you could just turn off. And if that sounds like something you're not interested in, I totally understand. And I feel like a lot of people in the theater that we went to specifically were not expecting what they saw. And I kind of had a idea of what it was going to be about, and I had an idea of in my head what the plot was going to be, and it was not that. And I guess I can kind of go into that too. I thought Defoe and Pattinson were going to be the same person, and this was kind of going to be like a not a time travel movie, but it was going to be like he was having a hallucination of his younger self. Defoe was picturing himself as in his younger years, and that would have been Robert Pattinson's character. And no, that is not the plot at all. So sorry if my made-up spoiler ruins that for anyone, but that is not the way the movie plays out. But everything is made to incredible historical accuracy. This whole lighthouse that the movie takes place in was built just for the film and taken down shortly after. Their facial hair is real. No prosthetics or anything like that. The camera gear kept breaking down on set because of the miserable weather conditions. As I mentioned, that there had these scenes where Pattinson's just getting beat up by the weather as he's doing his day-to-day wiki things. William Dafoe learned how to knit for the role. That's cool. Yeah, this is a really, really interesting movie. And there's definitely a story here. It's based off Greek mythological folktale, or folktale, or like a story of Prometheus and Protus. And this was all stuff that I read right after the movie as my girlfriend and I were going home, because it's kind of cool to be like, oh, that's what they were going for, and that's the inspiration of this scene and this image, because there's a lot of like symbolism and as you're watching it, there's a particular scene that's based off a painting, or like just this image that they show is based off this painting, and you obviously wouldn't know that unless you were in the information here reading it. So it's kind of cool to see that kind of stuff. And so, as I said, The Lighthouse, I recommend it. If any of this sounded interesting to you, I would go see it. It was kind of hard to find a theater that's showing it. It's part of the AMC Artisan Films, whatever the hell that means. But it's not going to be in every theater, I'll tell you that, because it's just not your average movie. But it's definitely worth the watch, I think. I'm almost hesitant to say that I'll rewatch it someday, because it's unsettling in that way that like maybe don't want to have a second viewing of it, kind of just leave it where it is. But yeah, I recommend it. I recommend The Witch and The Lighthouse. Robert Eggers, I definitely admire your work a lot, because I also applaud A24 as a production company. I do like a lot of films that are coming out by them. Midsummer being the first that I saw by myself many months ago. I really enjoyed that film. I enjoyed The Lighthouse. I saw a few previews before this movie too that a lot of A24, obviously, I guess they get to promote themselves with their own trailers before their own movie. And there's a lot of interesting movies coming out that I guess I'll talk about real quick. Uncut Gems being one. An Adam Sandler movie in a dramatic role for him returning to his dramatic acting. This is definitely not Grown Ups 3. It's kind of a cool story. But Uncut Gems is like a black comedy. This is all that I'm gathering is watching the trailer. Is Adam Sandler's this like New York City jeweler, and he's a bit sketchy. of a character, but he's always looking out for like the next big big sell, and it kind of gave me almost Breaking Bad vibes in this kind of thing where he has to juggle this high money business with his family and his um, people who are looking for money from him, and all this stuff is kind of building up, and without giving too much away, it just seems like a very intense and almost gritty movie, and it's cool to see Adam Sandler kind of returning back to that because he kind of fell off and is kind of laughed at after this Netflix movie that he made with Jennifer Aniston that was just absolute trash. It's kind of cool to see him return to punch drunk love kind of state of dramatic acting. So that was cool. Another film that I saw a trailer for that had a insane cast of characters is Knives Out, which will be out later this month, actually, the 27th of November. This movie looks really cool. A detective and a trooper travel to a lush estate to interview the quirky relatives of a patriarch who died during his 85th birthday celebration. So it kind of gave me some Clue vibes. The screenplay is by Ryan Johnson, directed and written by him, so that's cool. He has some good films under his belt. Well, did before The Last Jedi. Looper's a really cool flick if you've never seen it. The Brothers Bloom, another good one. But yeah, this film has so many stars in it, it is hard to count. Chris Evans, Daniel Craig. Who else did I recognize? One of my favorites, Michael Shannon. Definitely an underrated actor by many accounts. There's so many good movies that he's in, where he just kind of stands out for me. Who else is in this film? Oh, both of those films, Uncut Gems, excuse me, and this film, Knives Out, have Lakeith Stanfield in it, of Atlanta fame, and Get Out is another movie that he is very recognizable in. I'm glad he's getting a lot of work because he's a really phenomenal actor. Toni Collette's in this film, of Hereditary, and a lot of other movies. She's a fantastic actress. I'm kind of blanking on a lot of these actors' other films, but Christopher Plummer's in this film. Who else? I'm just trying to think of this trailer. But it's just a great ensemble cast. Definitely a movie to look out for later this month, and that is Knives Out. So I'm not sure if that one's A24 Studios. I don't think it is, but not that matters at all. It's just a cool film premise. I'm definitely looking forward to going to see that. And as far as other trailers, there's nothing that I can really recollect on. This was Tuesday. The days seem to blend together and I forget things. Yeah, to close out, I watched not all five, but I watched 5 Halloween movies. Halloween 1, 2, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Jesus Christ, terrible movie. Halloween 4. Not sure if that one has a subtitle, but I know Halloween 5 is called The Return of Michael Myers? The Curse of Michael Myers? I don't know. But the reason I'm mentioning this is I just went on a Halloween binge on Halloween Day, and it's safe to say that only the first movie and maybe the second are worth watching. These films kind of devolve as they go, and the third one, I don't understand at all how that's even a Halloween film. Michael Myers is not in that movie. The plot is completely irrelevant to any other film, and I don't get how they gave that the Halloween name, because that's just absurd. Just make your own movie. Uh, but I digress. Yeah, so watching these movies kind of became exhausting because, in the first movie, you don't really know what Michael Myers is. You know that he escaped from a sanitarium and he's a killer, but there is kind of stakes to it. And then by the time you get to the sixth film, you're kind of fucking bored because the same thing just keeps happening and happening and happening. Some cop or kid loads 6 shots into Michael Myers. He falls to the ground. He gets back up, and he keeps going. And that just repeats and repeats and repeats. What way can we blow up Michael Myers, throw him off a roof, this, that, and the other thing? And so I was just kind of surprised on how, as a kid, I watched these movies and they were terrifying because you're a kid. And I have one fond memory of watching H2O with my family, with my parents, my sister on one Halloween many, many years ago. And just being, a little spooked out and a little scared right after trick-or-treating, and having good Halloween memories. And these films do now hold up, at least to me. Watching them now, maybe watching them in succession is a bad idea, and I get that. But, yeah, those movies suck. So, yeah, I'm right at a half hour now, which was where my previous podcast ended. I believe my first episode has 15 views, and they are all me. And I have 1 subscriber, which is also me, which is to be expected. I wasn't expecting fame and fortune right off the bat here. And like I said, even if nobody listens to these, it's cool to look back on many years down the line to have these podcasts recorded. But I look forward to doing this every single Friday. I more or less want to do more obscure films. Not the most recent release. I did want to talk about The Lighthouse because I saw it this week in theaters, but will not always be movies that I saw in the movie theater. There was another movie I watched this week, Limitless, but it didn't feel like in the genre of all the other movies I talked about today. So I guess I'll just save that for another time. But that was a good movie. Spoiler. That's the review right there. Anyway, thanks so much for listening. This has been Film Cult Podcast, episode 2. Like, comment, subscribe, all that nonsense. If you are watching, if you are out there, would love to hear from you. You could also email me at filmcultpodcast or filmcultpodcast@gmail.com. So thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next Friday.